if you go from the off season to now, what's your shock factor? If I said, Mike, you'd be on foul territory on October 9th, talking about the Jays taking down the Yankees in 4 games to advance to the ALCS.
First of all, the shock factor for just being back on foul territory is pretty huge because it's been a long time since you guys called me. But as far as the Jays being in the ALCS, look, I thought going into the season that it would be a season like 2022 or 23, where the Blue Jays were sort of a fringe wild card contender, probably the 6th or 7th best team in the American League, might sneak into the playoffs, and once you get in, things can happen. But obviously they hadn't made anything happen in the playoffs for a very long time. And then the season started, and they started off 12-8, playing really well, but then they lost, I think, 16 out of 20. And it was pretty plain to see that it didn't look like things were going to work. I wasn't impressed by the offseason. And in fact, you know what, looking back now, I continue to not be impressed by the offseason because the players that they brought in, the big ones, Anthony Santander, Andres Jimenez, Jimmy Garcia, Max Scherzer, didn't really contribute to the Blue Jays having the 94-win season and finishing in first place. Jeff Hoffman did with 33 saves. That was pretty terrific, but he was also second league in blown saves, and he led the league in home runs allowed by relievers. So, it felt like to me, until they got Santander, that they were tripling down on this pitching and defense thing and trying to prove that you can win a game 0-0. Then they got Santander, a little bit of power, but he wound up missing 4 months. So I think it's reasonable to say that nobody saw this coming, and especially first week of May, nobody saw this coming. But credit to them, they've become a really, really good team with serious contributions from 1 through 26. They were the second hardest team in the league to strike out, and they led the major leagues in batting average and on-base percentage. That's tough to beat.
For sure. Kratz said this earlier. They out-baseball them. And what you just said kind of is what they do. They're 1 through 26. Every guy contributes, no matter who it is or what they're doing. And I agree. I mean, they just out-baseballed the Yankees, and they have they have a pretty, I'm not going to say easy path, but they have a path to not only get to the World Series for the first time in forever, but to win it because of really good starting pitching, really good defense, timely hitting, and a bullpen I think is better than people give them credit for, even though I know they've taken their lumps. But I just think this is a complete roster. And for me, it's the most complete roster right now in the American League.
I think it is, and I don't even know that you have to say right now the Blue Jays are the top seed in the American League. They earned that number 1 spot, and I understand. I don't know quite why. Maybe because they finished in last place last year. Maybe because they really have been an afterthought around Major League Baseball, except for 2015 and 16 for about 3 decades. But they're the top seed. They're the number 1 team in the American League. They have the best record in the league, so they should have the path to go into the World Series. And there's no question that Seattle and Detroit going to a Game 5 helps them out a lot because it takes Tarek Skubal and Logan Gilbert out of the equation until Game 3, regardless of which team they face. And they'll be playing a team that has to have done 2 cross-country flights in 3 days. And I know how well big league teams travel, but it's still a pain to do a couple of 6-hour flights in the space of 72 hours. So, yeah, they definitely, AJ, out-baseballed the New York Yankees. And I have to agree with Buck Martinez, one of our broadcasters here. The Yankees just aren't a very good baseball team. Yet they won 94 games and it was great, but if they're not hitting home runs, they're not going to beat you. And the fact that the Blue Jays were able to so overwhelm their starting pitching until Cam Schlittler, who was fine, nothing special, he gave up 4 runs, but fine. Max Fried, Luis Gil, and Carlos Rodon, none of them got an out in the 4th inning. And it's just because the Blue Jays wore them down. Gil, you can do that to. Fried and Rodon, you're not supposed to be able to do it to. But the Blue Jays have worn down good starting pitching all year by not striking out and having extended. Anthony Santander had an 11-pitch flyout last night. It's a good baseball team. They take care of the ball. They have tons of people on base, so a big hit's bound to happen sooner or later. And they do a lot of things that the Yankees don't, which is why they went 11-6 against them this year.
Was there some angst in this series between the two teams? Because I get it. When the series is over, it's a big series. You're playing your division rival, but before the series started, you saw George Springer say, "Oh, why don't they just give the Yankees the division?" And then after Hoffman closed the game out and struck out Bellinger, you saw him look over, yell at their dugout, shoo him away. You heard what John Schneider said. Play his comments after the game. And I get it, to the spoils go the winner goes the spoils, but was there extra angst because it was the Yankees or because it was a division rival?
I think that extra emotion was in there more because it was the Yankees and what I don't know if it's what they represent, but I've called it like manifest destiny. It's like people simply believe that because the Yankees are the Yankees, they have earned this level of respect and deference. And it's just not the case. I mean, the Yankees and their front office and the fan base sort of walks around as though, why would you even think you're going to beat us? Like what, like the Yankees were talking, and a lot of people were talking like the Yankees were the favorites in this series. Again, despite the fact that the Jays had won the season series with them, embarrassed them at Rogers Center. They went 8-1 against them in Toronto this year and were the higher seed, didn't have to play in the first round. And yet, now I think I saw on The Athletic, 92% of the people were predicting that their reporters were predicting the Yankees would win this series. The Yankees sort of carry themselves like, well, we're going to win and you're just going to have to deal with that. And so I don't have a problem with pushing back on that, especially when it's not deserved. And it certainly wasn't deserved this year. And it did feel like, you talked about George Springer saying they might as well just give it to New York. There were 3 calls in the last week and a half of the season, 2 on replay, and the Springer, what should have been a 2-run double down the line that was called foul, that was not reviewable. 3 plays that went horribly against the Blue Jays. A fan interference call in Tampa, a Dalton Varsho trap call on a ball he very clearly caught, but replay couldn't definitively determine that the ball might not have brushed against the top of a blade of grass while it was in his glove before he picked his glove up. People were starting to think that the screws were being turned against the Jays. I've always thought, look, if Major League Baseball didn't want the Blue Jays to win the division this year, they never would have gotten anywhere close to 94 wins. They would have been an 83-win team that didn't make the playoffs, and the tinfoil hat stuff would have started a lot sooner. But there were some heightened emotions at the time, and I believe that that anytime you have the chance to give it to the New York Yankees, you absolutely have to do it because they're the New York Yankees. They're the evil empire.
All right, moving forward.
Before you do, Kratzy, I have to say this one thing because I watched the segment before, and you were talking about how you were a 207 hitter and wouldn't have been able to get a hit. And I still remember the double in the 9th inning you hit off Aroldis Chapman in Cincinnati to win a game for the Jays. So give yourself a little bit of credit.
Hey, blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, but what a memory. That's like 2014. Yeah.
That was a big moment.
It was a big moment. Okay, appreciate it. Now I forget my question. No. Is the fact that they had to run a bullpen game, and is the fact that they had Chris Bassitt and Max Scherzer not on the roster a detriment moving forward? Is it something that they have to? And I know the bullpen game went really well, but holy crap. 7th inning, I think the Yankees had the tying run up. Had that game gotten tied up, then you're going to the next day's starter in Gausman, Trey Savage. Is that a detriment for the Blue Jays moving forward?
Yeah, it was 2 out in the 8th inning when the Yankees got the tying run to the plate. And after the walk to load the bases, Jeff Hoffman got a first pitch out. And that's when it got really, really tight. But you're right. If the Yankees tie the game, you're going to Gausman or you're Savage, and then your hands are pretty tied for Game 5. I think I thought going into the series, only carrying 3 starters was another one of these maybe too cute moves by the front office. But the truth is, Chris Bassitt finished the season on the injured list. He had a back problem, and they didn't think that he was going to be ready to help them in this series. He probably is back on the roster for the ALCS. And Max Scherzer, he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's one of the greatest pitchers of all time. He has been such a big help around here, especially those 6 weeks in July and August where he was so good. But Max Scherzer, since the middle of August, has pitched 25 innings and given up 25 runs. And he's got an ERA of over 12 in the first inning. So I'm not sure, I know this is like blasphemy, but I don't think he earned a spot on the playoff roster, much like Mark Burley wasn't on the playoff roster for the Jays in 2015. But I do think having the way the days off go in the best of 5 lent more credence to using a bullpen game, because you knew you were going to be able to take it easy on the relievers in Game 3. You hoped for a longer start from Shane Bieber and didn't get it, but they made sure that nobody threw more than 20 pitches out of the bullpen in Game 3, and an off day before that and an off day after Game 4, you can do it. But if you want to run a bullpen game in the ALCS, you're doing it where there's a span of 3 games with no off day, and it makes it a lot tougher because you're going to wear out your bullpen for Game 5 or in Game 3, and that's an issue. I think we're going to see Chris Bassitt back on the playoff roster in the next round.
All right, a couple things what you just said, Mike. One, not having Mark Burley on the playoff roster is blasphemy, okay? I don't know what he did, but, I mean, he was only throwing 83 in 2005, and he pitched fine, so I'm sure he was maybe throwing 82, so he would have been fine. So let's also, establish that. And, yeah, Max, you didn't hear anything from Max. Max understood why. These guys, they get it. They understand. But my question is are we going to see Bo? Are we going to see Bo Bichette? I know he's been jogging, but there's a big difference between jogging and playing shortstop in the ALCS against the other best team in the American League.
We're definitely not going to see Bo Bichette playing shortstop, I think. But I think we may see Bo Bichette as a DH in the ALCS. He spoke after the game last night in New York, and he said that he's made some huge strides in the past few days, but he still has to be able to run the bases, and he's got 3 days to get better. And, maybe he's got 6, because if I'm the Blue Jays and I think Bo's going to be ready for Game 3, I'm putting him on the roster if he's going to be ready for Game 3, which is Tuesday. Game 1 Sunday will be 5 weeks exactly since he got hurt, sliding into Austin Wells' shin guard and sort of jamming up his knee and straining it. And these injuries are like 4 to 6 week injuries usually. But to have him out there playing shortstop, there is 0 chance of that happening before the World Series if they get there, and maybe not even in the World Series. But I would not be surprised if he's on the roster as a DH only, and that might cost Anthony Santander a spot.
That's a good point.
Decisions.
Yeah, that's a tough call. Yeah.
I don't think it's a tough call, honestly. Santander has, I think, 3 hits since coming back. He missed most of the last 4 months of the season, and to be able to ask a guy to be who you are once you do that, it doesn't work for me. He was 1 for 10 with 6 strikeouts in the regular season, and I think had 2 or 3 hits in this ALCS. He's a poor defensive outfielder. You should be able to put George Springer out there, and to have Bo's bat back. He's missed a month, but his swing's a little bit different than Santander's, and Tony Tater's missed a lot of time and really hasn't done. He's had some great at bats since he's gotten back, but they haven't resulted in any hits.